Welcome everyone. Today we're going to talk about or learn a little bit about the origins of jazz. I got my little notes here, so I'm going to tell y'all what the origin of jazz is. Origins of jazz came from African Americans. It came from mostly the start of jazz came from the New Orleans, if you didn't know, and it started from there. And also, in 1987, Congress passed a resolution to making jazz an American treasure. So this was where jazz started to become the biggest thing it became, because before jazz was like this little thing. There's a lot of things. For example, I feel like now we're gonna talk about like today's culture, and I'm thinking about K-pop. I don't not K-pop, but K-pop. K-pop is something that came around about 2015, I think. But I don't listen to it that much. But I know it's like something that came out of blue nowhere, and it's like this jazz was like this little small thing of music that was not known for very many people. And then once the U.S. Congress made it this resolution of American treasure, it became the big thing it is today. We have amazing artists like Louis Armstrong, even jazz players today that you might not even know about, or like genres of jazz, or in like the pop culture now, you might not hear it, but like, for example, I know Lizzo. I can hear jazz in her music, and it's not mostly bass jazz, but there's some of her songs that are connected to jazz that have that kind of feel to it. Also, if you think about it, you got Aretha Franklin. I know some of her songs have that feel, that early '90s, '80s feel, kind of. Yeah, basically that. Also, jazz used a polyrhythm that was timbre vibration. And the origins of jazz, which polyrhythm is kind of the sound that they use, or like this way to make blues notes that sounded like jazz. And I'm gonna try to explain. Jazz to me is like a vibration, like in every music for real. Like, I'm gonna say it like this: jazz is a vibration. When you think about jazz, it makes me think of vibrations. Where if I listen to pop music, I might think of like a whistle or like sounds. You get what I'm saying? If you understand, I get it. But on to the next thing. The origins of jazz also came from folk culture, and there's many different things of folk culture. You can think about it as like ballads. Also with ballads like Celine Dion. Let's do it like that. If y'all know who she is, she does a lot of ballads, and she uses her voice to broaden an open sound, like a constant open sound. And like in certain parts of a song, she'll go real big, and then she'll sing. But those are ballads, and then you have working or songs that people use. And jazz just came from everywhere and everything. Jazz even came from churches, because you think about it now today in like common churches and gospel, they might use jazz methods to create songs, and even most instrumental musicians that came from jazz were and grew up in the church. And it's very common for people, if you're a jazz player and you like trumpet. I know a lot of churches that have a trumpet player or a pianist, or even drummers and stuff like that. They all came from churches, and then they broadened their horizons to jazz, and they became the greats they are today as well. And I also want to talk about more about the African American culture and with jazz, since it started there. Um, the African Americans kind of made jazz what it is today, and I explained that before. But because of the U.S., and this is what I'm going back to, we have jazz today. We have the most influential part of culture because I think about classical and all that stuff. I really think jazz was the most influential part of music, where classical did help. But if you think about today's music and you hear the sounds, I feel like in today's modern music, maybe not as much as rock, but rock I could still feel like there's jazz. But jazz influenced the most of today's music, regardless of classical in the beginning of times. With dang, why can I not remember classical artists? Um, Lord, guys, forgive me. I cannot think of no classical. Oh, Beethoven. Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, guys. But Beethoven, he was a classical artist, and I know he influenced the musical, and he probably influenced jazz. But I feel like that since jazz took on the role of the next music genre, the next big thing, it influences our society today. And that is the origins of jazz, which is the beginning and the biggest, Jesus, the biggest influence in our today's society of music.